13th, 2023. Now, it was very cool last night, and if I turn the camera just a little bit, you'll see on the roof of that first building, which is part of a Gisuksa complex, a residence building, that there's sort of a thin film of white, and that's frost. It was a killing frost. It's very cool last night. Now, it's the beginning of March, and you might think that in a temperate climate like South Korea's, that's not a big deal. However, the week before, the 2 weeks before, it was quite mild, and in fact, last week it was positively warm. It was going up to around 20 degrees. What happened on this campus was that the local frog population started to breed, and you could notice the sounds of these frogs, which were beyond the tadpole stage. They were I didn't see them; I just could hear them, but they were sort of chirruping up a storm. That very pleasant sound has stopped. They were killed last night. Now, you might shrug and say that's nature. For example, in South Korea, there is a phenomenon known as gotsemtui, which means cold weather that's jealous of the flowers. In other words, after flowers begin their first blooming, sometimes there's a cold snap, and it can kill flowers. That's how nature works. Nevertheless, these patterns have become more pronounced. A couple of years ago, one noticed that the blooming of seasonal spring flowers started to happen all at once. That was weird. And more than that, last November, that is November 2022, jindale, the azaleas, started blooming. These were the azaleas that were supposed to bloom now in the spring. I'd like to know what is happening in your jurisdiction. Are weather patterns getting wonky? Tell me what you're experiencing. It's March the 22nd. The weather has turned warm again. It was 22 degrees Celsius today. It felt even warmer. I was outside on a park bench, and I got hot just sitting in the sunshine. Now, what that means is that this is perfect weather for the frogs to start breeding. However, as I posted in previous videos, there are several frog populations on my university campus. Frog population A, right behind our Gisuksa, our residence building, got completely wiped out. Frog population B, just a little bit below it, close to some tennis courts, was decimated. Although a few frogs survived, although in a very sort of pitiful, plaintive kind of way. Now I'm close to where frog population C is, and they are doing pretty well. It is quite noisy here with chirruping. So enough frogs seem to have endured the cold spell in this area, which lasted at least 2 weeks. And now that the warm weather is here, they are thriving. The ones who survived are back in good shape, and I suppose eggs of newly born frogs are starting to hatch, etc. Now, one other thing to watch out for in South Korea, because the weather is starting to warm up. Well, in March, the jindale, the wild azaleas, start to bloom, and then in April, traditionally, blossoms like botgot, cherry blossoms, peach blossoms, and so forth start to bloom. What will probably happen this year, because the seasonal cycles are sort of accelerating, is that the flowers will all sort of bloom at the same time, all these different species of flower. And again, that's because climate change is accelerating these movements. That magnolia tree right behind me over my shoulder is a beautiful tree. Sugi and I have nice memories of it. It's always been on this street. However, it is one of the last real trees standing on this street. And if I turn the camera around, you'll see why. For the most part, individual houses have been knocked down and replaced by four-story apart. These small, low-rise apartment buildings. The street is zoned only for low-rise, and they have replaced the kind of detached house that has the magnolia with it. Now, these apart could have trees too, but nobody really pays attention to the trees that used to be on the street. And once the new buildings are put up, the larger trees simply disappear. Sometimes they are replaced by little minuscule bushes, but that is not usually even the case. Generally speaking, they're only replaced by first floor parking areas and little recycling depots. Right over my shoulder, they're rising up like a little mosquito, is a helicopter, and it's been scooping water out of the Han River. There are at least half a dozen, maybe more, helicopters that are doing the same thing. They all have buckets underneath them. And they come in over the river, they scoop up water, and then they fly off into the distance. Now, way over my shoulder are a set of mountains, just sort of to the right of that bridge. And that may be where the forest fire is. There have been a lot of forest fires in South Korea. All through March, it was very, very dry. There was one day of rainfall that I can remember. Now, the forest fires usually happen, of course, way out in the rural areas. But apparently, there's one that's happening very, very close to the city of Seoul. And so there's this constant traffic of these choppers coming in, scooping water out of the river, and then flying off to where the forest fire is burning. It's a kind of sort of fascinating in a boyish kind of way, but it's disturbing. And of course, there's the added irony that all these choppers burn a lot of fuel. They create a lot of carbon emissions, which in turn increases global warming, which in turn makes the dry conditions worse. So you've got this sort of vicious cycle of cause and effect. 39 hours since the rain started, and the forecast was wrong. The rain was supposed to last all throughout the day. Now, the forecast was not necessarily that the rain would be constant throughout today, Saturday. So it might start raining again later in the afternoon. We'll see what happens. But in any case, the steady, constant rain that lasted around 38, maybe 39 hours is over. The local frog population is happy. Does it matter if it rains a lot in the spring? No. I mean, it's good for the growing cycle. Springs and winters and springs in South Korea can be very, very dry, drought conditions. Uh, so the vegetation is happy and so forth. But as I said before, I've spoken with Suki and a lot of my other relatives, my brothers-in-law and so forth, and they find this degree of rain right now in early May somewhat disconcerting, because usually you get this kind of weather in the midsummer monsoon period, which is called Jangma in Korean. And that usually starts in June, July, and tends to taper off in the beginning or middle of August. Some years it just continues right through the summer, but generally it stops in mid-August, and there's a period that Koreans call yoram. It's the height of summer, very hot and humid, and then in the fall, late August and fall, you get typhoon, the big oceanic storms that come in. And these rain cycles tend to mesh very well with the growing season in Korea. They mesh well with rice cultivation, with growing fruit and so forth. You want a lot of rain early in the growing season, and then sunshine later in the growing season. Hopefully typhoons don't do too much damage, and then you want to harvest in late September in fairly dry conditions. We'll see how it goes this year. Now, another sort of rain issue that I'd like to talk about is, as I mentioned in my previous video, I reckon that during this first big rainfall in May, we got over 100 millimeters. I'd say around 120 or something like that. The one that we've had recently, because of the torrential rain last night, has probably added around maybe 10, 20 more millimeters. To give you an idea of how metric works and sort of give you a sense of the perspective of that, annual rainfall in South Korea is usually around 1,200 millimeters to 1,600 millimeters. I am 182 centimeters high, which means that annual rainfall would come to probably around here up to around here, my whole height. And what we've had so far in terms of, let's say, close to 130 millimeters of rain so far has been, it would come up to around here on me. Now, what will happen this year is that if we get sort of this continual rain, because we don't usually get heavy rainfalls in May. We're getting sort of Jangma style rains right now, monsoon rains. In other words, rains that last for several days, that have periods of sort of torrential downfall, and where the rain doesn't really cease. This isn't like a Canadian rainstorm in spring where you get sort of drizzle all day, or you get a big thunderstorm and then the whole system ceases. These systems, these Jangma monsoon systems tend to sort of roll on and continue over several days, several weeks, and so forth. If the trend continues this year, we're going to get a huge amount of precipitation annually, maybe over 2 meters of rainfall total. That's higher than me. I'm here on the campus of our university, and as you can see, it's a bright day. It's also extremely warm. It's November the 2nd, and it's well over 20 degrees. It feels like it's 25 or something like that. It's crazy weather. It's crazy warm. Now, it reminds me of an experience that I had around 23 years ago when I was walking along a university campus, this one in Toronto. And it was very, very warm. And I mentioned to one of my thesis supervisors that it just seemed eerie, this kind of warm weather. And she just looked at me and she said, "I love it." She's an educated person. At the time, global warming was not sort of the great kind of threat in people's consciousness. It's cool here in South Korea. After an extremely hot summer, finally the temperatures are seasonal. It's late September. It should be coolish. The high today was around 25 degrees, 26 degrees. When the sun was out, it was quite hot, but there was a coolness to the air. It felt autumnal. However, before that, there were 3 months of very unusual heat waves. Now, Korea has hot summers. Generally, what it has is Jangma, the monsoon season, and then it has what it calls Yurum, which is the summer itself when temperatures go way up and it's very humid. But this year what happened was we had Jangma, we had heavy rains, but we also had a heat wave that persisted for over 3 months. Temperatures every single day of between 32 to 37 degrees Celsius. That's approximately 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit every single day. People got nervous. Now, in the meantime, what's happening is that the glaciers, the Thwaite Glacier in Antarctica, are at risk of raising sea levels. Because of this global warming tendency, it looks as if we might have rising sea levels within a few years instead of a few decades. I mean, nobody knows for sure. But what is happening to ocean temperatures, ocean surface temperatures, is they're going up quicker than anticipated. This is raising the atmospheric temperatures, ergo the heat waves that we had during the summer. But it also means that sea levels might go up. Now, this is a sort of dystopic scenario that's been predicted by a number of ecologists and so forth, but people tend to brush it off. And I've noticed that when I post about ecological issues online, that those ignoramuses who are in a state of denial are very, very prevalent, much more than ecologically minded people. And what will happen, they're in denial. It doesn't matter how hot it gets. They say, well, that's seasonal. That's the way the Earth is. If these glaciers break off and melt into the ocean, we will see permanent change that nobody can deny. The carcinogens of Erie Canal is the holy gill, which coalesces with filaments of asbestos. Pollution bulges like sick pink wedding cake on the backs of belugas. The plasticky discards of six-packs choke the life out of young seals, and dolphins asphyxiate in the ghostly waverings of nylon nets. So, as the mosquitoes splatter across a multitude of windshields, do we. It's murder, unintentional murder, aborted from the vacuoles of our mind and spun into outer space, where we will flee, lifelessly, the planet's disgrace.